first off, any like issues you guys were looking to tackle or any goals that you had for Dakota, like moving forward in the future?
Kennel. Being good in the kennel so we can leave the house.
Yeah.
We've only had her for about a week, but she's already, like, she's good in the crate as long as we're there.
Okay.
The minute that either one of us leaves her sight, she is going psycho.
Okay.
We've had the crate in the bedroom, and she sleeps through the entire night, which is like crazy, but we obviously don't want to get any like attachment issues. So yeah, crate training is big. And then I guess just building a foundation for, she's a German Shepherd, so we want some like really regimented, we want her to be like the best kind of guard dog that's
especially
sweet to
since
the
she's
people.
going to be bigger too,
Yeah, so sweet to the people that we want her to be sweet to, but protector of the house, you know, that kind of thing. So really laying the foundation for that. Anything else?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, like, that sounds like just like a little bit of separation anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's not an issue, especially since she's very young, so it'll be pretty straightforward to work through, just because you guys are getting a head start on it. So sometimes once it gets to adult dogs, then it's like, okay, now we have to undo like a lot of this stuff that has happened.
Yeah, and we've only had her for a week, so.
Yeah. Well, that's good then, but all of that makes sense, so it shouldn't be too complicated. As far as the crate stuff, the reason why she's probably sleeping through the night is because she knows you guys are right next to her there.
Right.
Most likely, if you put the crate in like another room, then she would not sleep through the night anymore.
Well, we tried that for an hour straight.
Yeah.
And then I just finally got up and went to the couch.
Yeah, that makes sense. But for the separation anxiety stuff, one thing I would recommend is when you open the crate, does she usually just try and like run out right away, or does she kind of like wait?
No.
Just
I've
right
tried
away?
to make her wait.
Okay.
But
It's too young.
Yeah.
at least sit. She knows sit. Like she learned that immediately. So I'll try to at least get her to sit.
Yeah.
Before I even touch the crate. But otherwise, she's, you know, chomping at it at any side of the wall. She's like trying to get out.
Yeah, so for her, there's a couple ways to go about it with addressing the crate stuff while she's still a puppy, like before we even introduce anything like prong collar, e-collar, anything like that. One thing would be I would have her in the crate like as often as you can when you guys are at home, like when you're kind of like more in control of the situation and have time to work on it, rather than just putting her in when you like actually need it. Just because then you're most likely not going to have time to address the excitement as thoroughly as you would need to. So it's just better to do it under a more controlled circumstance. And what you'll do is, there's a couple ways of going about it. You'll put her in the kennel, and one thing you can do is a kennel correction, which is going to be adding in a little bit of that like physical correction, but in a softer way, because she's just a puppy. She might have a hard time understanding certain things. So we'll start bringing in that physicality slowly. And with that, as she goes to run out of the door, we would recommend something where you close the door. So it's okay if you close it like kind of quickly because she might be fast.
Yeah.
You don't have to like completely slam it or anything, but it's just letting her know that if she's going to cross the threshold of the door is just going to push back onto her.
Got it.
And then you would keep it closed till she backs up, and then maybe open again. She runs forward, same thing, close it. I would keep repeating that until she gets the idea to give the door space. One thing you might see is frustration start to build just because she's wanting to exit the crate and we're not letting her.
Yeah.
So it's going to cause her frustration. And that's normal. We don't have to worry about correcting that necessarily, because you might see a little bit of the whimpering or barking or still like a little bit of pawing, but we want to take it slow and not correct too much while we're just communicating to her basically like, just don't run out of the kennel. That's also going to help manage her energy. So instead of her always getting to this like 10 out of 10 level when she's about to get out of the kennel, she knows that, okay, well, if I have all this energy and I just run out, I'm not going to get out of the kennel. So then she might dial it back down to like a 6 or a 7, which is going to be more manageable. And with the separation anxiety, all we're trying to do is keep that excitement low. So every little thing that you could do to bring down the excitement for her is just going to help you deal with the separation anxiety, because the entire time that she's in the kennel, she's building, and then she's like freaking out. So if she's already at like a 9, then she's only like one level away from a 10, and where she's having like her main issues. But if we can keep her at like a 4, okay, now like, yeah, she might get a little nervous, but she's not getting to that 10 out of 10 level. Does that all make sense?
So, I have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Location of the crate right now, where we want the kennels to be, is in a pretty isolated spot.
Yeah.
It's like 2 rooms away from the living room, the kitchen, where we mostly spend our time.
Yeah.
Right now, the crate is in the living room.
Okay.
So she can at least see us. So I guess my question is, when can we move the crate back? Or should we move the crate, or like location?
Yeah.
And then secondly, can Harley help with anything? Like how should we be handling Harley when we're working with her?
So for the first thing with the crate, I would say if you have like a location that you're wanting it to go to anyways, I would just move it there now, so she has more time to get used to it. Because like the more isolated, the more farther away she is from you guys, the harder it's gonna be for her to contain that nervousness. So if you know you're gonna move it farther away anyways, I would just do that now, so that way all the like effort you're gonna put in now is like spent on the actual spot where it's gonna be, rather than a spot that's closer. Because you're just gonna take like 1 step forward and then like 2 steps back, basically.
Yeah.
So I would go ahead and move it now, and then just address whatever needs to be addressed with like the kennel corrections, or with another thing that you can do if you're not trying to necessarily let her out of the cage, but you're still trying to correct like the gnawing at the bars or anything, or the pawing and everything. Was it ever suggested to you like a bonker? Do you know what that is? Okay. That's something that we'll do for puppies usually. Adult dogs too, it depends on like however the dog handles it. But it's just basically like a rolled up towel, or like a roll of like paper towel, something really soft, just to be able to like bonk the top of the cage with, if she's doing that, to give her some type of correction. So that is kind of letting her know like, no, like don't do that. Because if we're just consistently telling her no over and over again, that's not necessarily making sense to her. So following up with that more kind of like pressure forward with her, because you're going to be like in front of the cage, you're going to be over it, you bonk it, like that's a lot of forward pressure for her to handle. So that's giving that correction of don't gnaw on the cage, don't paw at the cage or anything like that. So I would do those 2 things with the door, with the bonker, and then move the cage right away, so that way you're giving her like the most realistic practice.
Okay.
Does that answer that question, or? Okay.
Does that make sense to you, Cody?
And then overnight, it's definitely going to be like not as smooth as it is now. So I would say get as much practice as you can in during the day, so that way at night she's already had all these repetitions basically throughout the day. When you're already awake, you're already able to be with her. So that way at night doesn't become like your main practice time when you guys like need to sleep, obviously.
Okay.
As far as Harley goes, there's not necessarily anything she has to do. I would say like if it starts becoming an issue where she's like getting too curious or getting in your way when you're trying to do stuff with the puppy, then I would maybe like just have her go like a different room, or have her go do something else. Basically, the only thing to like keep an eye on with her would just be like, stay out of the way when you guys are working with the puppy. So that way it doesn't get too confusing for her.
Because like I was thinking like, should she be in the crate with her when we're doing crate training, or is it like taunting this puppy if Harley's out of her crate too?
Are they going to be in the crate like when they're kenneled, if you guys are like leaving for the day or something? Like are they going to be together?
Eventually I want her to be loose.
Okay.
Like, good enough to where she doesn't in the house, you know.
Okay.
But until then,
Until then.
both of the dogs will be crated,
Okay. Then I would say keep them kenneled separately just because we don't necessarily want to create a scenario where now she's like starting to develop separation anxiety with Harley.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just because what's going to happen is that she's going to get used to Harley always being there, always being there, always being there. And let's say one day maybe you have to take Harley to the vet or something for like a little checkup.
Yeah.
And now she's there alone. Well, she's going to have zero practice with that.
Yeah.
So now she's going to just jump right to a 10.
Okay.
So I would just make it the most realistic scenario and the most like straightforward one for her when you're going to be working on it. So that way you just get the hard part out of the way at the beginning.
Yeah.
So then even if Harley's with her, if Harley's without her, she already knows how to handle like herself.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But I would just, if Harley's in the way or anything like that, just have her like kind of politely go somewhere else for a moment, because that can be more challenging for her because maybe she wants to play with Harley. Maybe she's like getting more frustrated because she wants to go off and do stuff with Harley. So that would be the easiest thing, is just having her kind of out of the way there.
Okay.
Does that answer that question? Mm-hmm. Okay.
One last thing, I guess, to Cody's point. Like, I don't really remember the point at which I stopped crate training Harley and like just let her out freely.
Yeah.
But like that kind of just depends on her level of intensity in the crate, right? Like as soon as she's comfortable in the crate, and then like we trust them to both be out together, that's kind of just like, there's no like set timeline, I guess.
I would just say like you can look for different signs to tell like what's going to happen. Like if for some reason when she's out of the crate and you guys are home but maybe not in the same room, you notice that maybe she's having an issue chewing on stuff. Okay, well what that's telling me is that, well, most likely if I'm just in another room and she's already doing that, probably if I leave she's going to do that too.
Yeah.
So I would just look to see like what she's doing like day to day. If she has like no issues chewing, if she has no issues like with other stuff or like pawing at the door or something, then I would say like, okay, like we know that she's not going to do that stuff. And then the crate training, whenever that's like solid, then I would say you can give her more freedom. So the way that I would look at it, especially with you guys just getting her, you want to develop like a healthy relationship as far as her having like that respect for you guys and for the home as well.
Yeah.
So doing the crate training very, very, very often throughout the first month is going to be important, because that's like when they're learning their place in the home basically. So sometimes, especially for like obviously a very cute puppy like her, owners will bring home their puppy or even their adult dog, and they want to spoil them with a bunch of stuff right away, which makes sense because we had brought them home, we want the best for them. But in that first month, if they overspoil them and they're not doing any crate training, there's no rules basically, there's no structure. So then the dog is gonna think like, okay, well, I guess this is my house now. And then you can run into issues of like there being maybe resource guarding things or maybe trying to be like very pushy to you guys. So having that structure and having them basically like earn their freedom, I guess, is going to help them just smoothly acclimate to like your guys' lifestyle and with Harley as well.
Yeah.
So at least for the first month, I would try and be like very like early and often with the kennel stuff. So even if you guys are just like relaxing and nothing's happening, and maybe you're watching a movie, okay, maybe that's a good time to have her practice the kennel stuff for like an hour, 2 hours. At least a little bit every day, and then like if you can overnight as well. Again, it's just beneficial for even if she goes to like daycare, even if she goes to like a friend's house, you know that she can be okay in a kennel and not cause any issues.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep.
With the kennel stuff as well, how is she like with like the bathroom and like potty training and everything?
I would say for a week, she's doing pretty good.
Yeah, minimal accidents.
Okay.
Like yesterday she didn't have one, but we've been taking her, I work from home, so I've been taking her out very frequently.
Yeah.
Probably once every 1 or 2 hours.
Okay.
But yeah, when she's with us, she sleeps through the entire night, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So with the puppy stuff, we usually go like an hour per month is what we can expect of them. So 1 to 2 hours is fine. You guys just got her, so you wanted to be safe with it.
Yeah.
When is like a scenario where she's usually having an accident, like so far?
For me, it was like right after a nap. Yeah, or right after eating. I think that's the only thing for me.
Yeah. For the right after eating thing, we would just recommend for now, like as when she's done with her meal, like 10, 15 minutes after that, then right away let her out, regardless of like the schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
Just because like she's a puppy, she's gonna be moving around, so we would expect her to have to go to the bathroom pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then in general, you can kind of push the time a little more as she's getting older. So right now at 3 months, you can shoot for like 2.5 to 3 hours between breaks. I would just make sure that you kind of have like sight of her basically. Like you're either interacting with her or she's like in the kennel. Because that's going to give you the best opportunity to stay really consistent with the potty training. Because when she has her accidents, is that like she's in the kennel or is that like around the house?
She hasn't had any in the kennel, but it's around the house, yeah. It's like, for me, it was I took my eyes off her for a second and then just boom.
Okay,
She was squatting.
No,
So-
yeah, that's very common. And like she even knows like, okay, maybe like, mom's not paying attention. I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah.
To avoid any of that and to like, because basically the best way to potty train is to never let them have an accident in the house. And if they do, then try and have them deal with the consequences. And the way that we would do that is, like I said, either you're engaging with her because you're doing something specific and you like have your attention on her, or she's in the kennel if you're not like specifically doing something with her. So that way, like say that same scenario where like you go off and do something, if she has an accident in the kennel, that way now she has to deal with it herself. So with that, like that's her like area, and we would only clean it up once we take her out for her next bathroom break. So that's kind of the consequence. Like, okay, if you're gonna go to the bathroom, like I know you don't want to go to the bathroom basically in your like home.
Yeah.
So when we are giving them that consequence, that's all we really have to do is just let them like be with it, and then we can take them out, have them go to the bathroom and clean up whatever, and then they can start fresh and everything like that again.
Okay.
Any questions with that?
No, I think we probably know a lot of this. It's just a good refresher, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you guys will be fine. I'm more just like going in depth with everything, so that way there's like you leave here with maybe as little questions as possible.
Sure. Yeah.
So like that's what I would do with the potty training, and then as the months go on, like 4 months, you could try 4 hours in between, 5 months, so on and so forth, until she gets to 6 months, which is like that's like the full like range.
Cool.
Any questions with that? Okay. As far as any of the training stuff, I think from your email you guys said that you were interested in like puppy Head Start.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I don't know the difference between puppy training, Head Start, whatever services you guys have.
It really depends on like what your goals are and what you guys plan on doing. So puppy Head Start, the main thing with that is going to be having that potty schedule for clients who are having trouble with like the potty training. And it's also going to just start implementing a little bit of that food learning to get them into that working mindset and having them start to learn the basic functions of like sitting, laying down, doing all this different stuff, which can transition like later on into more training. But the big thing that usually people choose it for is the potty training stuff and the crate training stuff, because they have to be in a crate here sometimes, and then they're obviously on a strict potty schedule.
I don't know. I think we could probably do most of that ourselves. So then the next step above that would be what?
For that, I would say you can go like 2 routes with her. If you really want to just focus more on the food learning stuff and building up the basics there, then the puppy board and trains are like still doing the same thing with the puppy board and train and daycare and trains are still doing the same thing with the potty schedule and the crate training. But since they're here with us like more consistently, then it's more heavy on like the obedience part. So with that, I'm pretty sure it's like you get like the hour instructional videos, just like Harley did in person though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I'd be interested in too, because like I think the bond that we want to have is really important. So.
Yeah, there's puppy in person too, and that is like more strictly focused on like just the obedience stuff with food and everything.
Yeah. Like we were looking for, Cody can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were looking for like something above like going to a PetSmart.
Oh yeah,
for like a puppy training class, like.
Yeah. So are you planning on like moving her towards e-collar then? Is that the goal?
I don't think we've decided yet.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
So.
We have one because we bought one for Charlie, but she passed away before we could do training.
I heard. I'm very sorry for you guys.
Thank you. So we have one. So yes, I think we do want to move towards e-collar.
Then one thing that I would recommend that we do for some clients usually is we add in a kind of transitional phase to be able to start with the pressure work earlier than 6 months, because normally 6 months is like our adult dog like cutoff.
I see.
What we'll do, and we've done it with a few puppies in the past, is to start introducing them.
So cute.
Yeah, to start introducing them to the pressure. Like, let's say she did a board and train here, and it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The first week would be us doing prong collar with her, and like we would still like record it and do like video sessions for you guys and all that. But you guys wouldn't necessarily be doing the prong collar. We're just doing that to help transition her to start learning about like how to move with pressure and everything. Yeah. And then once that's been like acclimated for her and she's like cool with that, then we move on to the e-collar after that, because now she's already got like some more easily understandable background with the pressure.
Yeah.
And then the e-collar is gonna like make a lot more sense to her. So it'll be easier to do it even at a younger age.
I will tell you right now, we're definitely not doing boarding. And I know that we want to do all of the work ourselves. So if we did in-person instruction,
that can be done with in-person too. So like the way that it would work is like, it would depend on like how that would be broken up, but like a week would be like just like the one class for the week. That class being like introduction with like prong collar and stuff, and then depending on how she's handling everything, then like next week would be like introduction to e-collar now because she has that background. Yeah. So that's how it could break down. As far as like the length of the classes or anything, I would have to see how we would go about splitting that up and everything, but I don't think it would be like anything where it's like a 12-week thing or something like that.
Yeah.
I think between like 3 and 6 weeks,
that's
which
what
is
I was
like
thinking too.
Yeah, like our two kind of like smaller ranges. Just because if it's going to be like just very introductory stuff, then for the 3 week I could see it being like the first week prong collar, second week e-collar if everything's going well, and then the third week just like advancing the e-collar a little bit more. And depending on her, we'll kind of decide how like fast that is.
Yeah. Cody, do you want to talk about maybe like socialization and what we want to do for that, like as far as socializing her to other dogs and humans? Like, we don't have a lot of dogs in our life, so maybe we.
I mean, she's doing pretty good so far. I would say it's not like Charlie.
Yeah. I guess I was going to ask about daycare and train.
Yeah. To have like the daycare for more socialization?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another option as well, but the only thing with that is like you still have in-person time, but it would be less in-person time overall.
Yeah.
So the way that works is like, let's say it was like 10-day daycare and train. So you would get like a video for like the first 5 days, however those are spaced out for you guys. of like, in her case, doing the prong collar. And then the second 5 days would be another video on her going through the e-collar and the introduction with all that. And then you guys would get like, I think for 10 days would be 3 hours of follow-up time that you can schedule however you like. So let's say you wanted to do an hour session at the park to go over heel or something, then we would do that as like an in-person session. Another hour session could be more structured socialization if you feel like you need to go over that for any reason. And then another hour could be like, okay, maybe you guys want to work on recall more in depth or something. So that's kind of a mixture of the two. But if you wanted like the most in-person time and to like be there in the moment that everything's happening, then I would say like the in-person classes would probably be the most suitable if that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
And then as far as socialization, that can be like one of the in-person classes as well. Towards the end of the program, let's say for example, you went with like the 6 week or something and you have like an extra class at the end that you're like, we don't really need to use this. You can save that for whenever you want. And then maybe when she's an adult dog and you want her to socialize more with other dogs that may like be your friend's dogs or something like that, or dog park or something, then that class can be used as like a socialization class down the line as well.
Okay.
So it's really up to you guys, however you want to go about it. But I would say if you are planning on doing something like the slowly moving towards e-collar, I would not do puppy head start, or you guys said that the board and train also is not something else. So I would stay away from those two. And then in person sounds like the most suitable. Daycare and train will also like work for you guys, but that's if you guys are interested in that. But you also don't have to make like a choice right now.
Yeah.
You guys can like talk about it, do whatever you got to do.
Definitely.
But I would say like it seems like in person might be the best fit, but daycare and train will also achieve your goals if that's something you are worried about or wanting to try.
And so she's a little, obviously 3 months, she's a little too young for like, when can we start, I guess? When should we start? If we wanted to do, what'd you call it?
The prong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like the prong collar can start pretty early, like even just at like 4 months.
Okay.
But I'll double check because I would want to talk to Jesse too to make sure, because he has just more experience with everything.
Right. She's also not fully vaccinated yet either, so that would be minimum, which, is when she's done with that.
Yeah, I think once she's done with that would be like our cutoff. We're like, okay, yeah, we can start with that. But I'll double check on that. And then like Elizabeth was already communicating with you guys through email. So we'll just kind of figure that stuff out. But with the prong collar, it can be pretty early. And then you can use that for a little bit, see how that's working for you. Because it doesn't have to be like rushed or anything. So maybe you want to do the prong collar and just sit with that for like a few weeks and then come back and finish with the e-collar. You can do that as well.
Okay.
So really whatever's comfortable with you guys. With the puppy stuff moving into e-collar, it's definitely something you want to take your time with, just because there is a lot of nuance to it because she is very young, so her handling the same pressure as Harley might not go as well because she needs to learn those concepts and everything.
Yeah, I don't think Harley started until she was 6 months anyway. So.
Yeah.
But like for me, I don't know about Cody, but for me, like the puppy stage in general is tough with the crate training, the potty training. She's so mouthy right now. And so, for us is training just simply like what you said, food work, and we work on basic commands. Or do we go to you guys for like some instruction to help us lean into that as well as e-collar stuff? So
I would say the obedience stuff is like fun and good work for her, like mentally and everything, but we like make a clear distinction between like behavior and obedience. So we wouldn't ever use obedience to correct behavior. So like when you're telling her to sit because maybe she's going to do something you don't want her to do, we just would view that as like a Band-Aid on the situation because we're not really addressing the behavior in her head. A good analogy that we like to use sometimes is obedience is like the stuff you learn in school, like social studies, math, science. And behavior is like morality, like don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, stuff like that. So she can have really strong obedience commands, but we're never communicating to her like, hey, I don't want you gnawing at the cage. Hey, I don't want you like getting mouthy with me. Hey, I don't want you barking at this like specific thing. So with addressing the behavior, that's where we add in more of like the corrections, as I mentioned, or like a hand correction, like how we do sometimes here. And if you guys have ever seen like Cesar Millan, like he is known for doing that. That's adding in that physicality that I'm pretty sure like you guys are familiar with it, or I brought it up in the consultation before as well. But it's adding in that physicality that is allowing us to communicate something to them. Because with words, you know, obviously they can't speak like you and I can, to where we can figure things out like with words. Their way of communicating is through physicality. That's what another dog would do if there was like an altercation, or even if Dakota's like mom was in the picture and was saying like, hey, stop that, then Dakota's mom would go for a small bite on them to add in that physicality. So that's what the bonker is doing. That's what the kennel correction with the door is doing. That's what your hand would be doing if you do that. Like, let's say you're playing with her and she starts to get too nippy with your hands. I would just do a hand correction and keep playing with her. Keep her in that situation, because we don't want her to think that the correction means like, get away from me, basically, like we're done playing. The correction is just, oh, you bit my hand. We could still play, but just don't bite my hand. So keeping her in that situation is going to be important too.
Got it. Okay.
So right now, it is these more like lighter forms of pressure because she is young. But as you guys introduce that and then move into prong and move into e-collar, it's going to be easier for her because you're creating that familiarity. So she understands like that there's these consequences, that you're basically communicating the word no to her.
Instead of just saying the word no.
Yeah.
Because we've been saying that a lot.
Yeah. So even with words, like the physicality is what's giving that word power. So like same thing with the consequences for whether it's humans or dogs. Like if somebody keeps saying they're going to do something but they don't do it, well, now what they say doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So with her saying no, to her, nothing bad is happening. So she's like, I don't care that they're saying no. But if you say no and then follow it up with a correction, okay, now no means a lot, because no means I'm about to get corrected. So then next time you say this word or a specific command, then she understands like, okay, I'm going to listen to mom when she says no, because I don't want to be corrected after that.
What does a hand correction look like? Because like I was tapping her on the nose,
Yeah.
hitting her on the butt. Like what does it look like?
It's like this. It's like
Yeah, but so
more aggressive. I feel like.
yeah, no, you got it right with the hand motion and everything. The easiest place to do it is going to be like behind the ribs but above the hip, where they have the little soft spot. Yeah, just because one, you're not going to hurt your fingers by hitting their bones or anything like that, and then two, you're not going to hurt them because that's just like a soft muscly area.
Okay.
And when you do it, you can kind of feel to what degree like you're doing it. So like you can think of like a scale of like 1 to 10 in your head, to where if it's something very minor and you know she's going to listen, maybe I only do like a 3, just to let her know like, hey, stop. Maybe that 3 doesn't work, or maybe she's getting like very intense about something. Okay, now I'm going to do like a 7 and really try and like push. And then you should be able to like feel it out with her, because she's not only getting the correction from your hand, but she's also getting that pressure from you and viewing you more as like a disciplinary figure as well.
Yeah.
So that's something that's worth a try. And when you do it, just make sure that you also like are having that demeanor with it. Because if you're like laughing or something and doing it, it's sending like mixed signals to her. So then she's like, did you correct me, or are you just like playing with me? But then once you see that she like takes the correction, she's kind of like in that more serious tone, then you can go back to whatever you're doing.
That's you saying ow when she bites your feet.
I know. She'll like nip at my toes and I just say ow, because
Yeah.
I read somewhere that like saying ow in a really high pitched voice is also like,
Well, Charlie knew what ow meant.
Yeah.
I don't know her head from her ass.
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the dog as well. Like some dogs are more like sensitive to where like, oh, I didn't mean to bite your toes or something like that. But especially her as like a very like playful puppy, she already seems pretty confident just from the way she walks around.
Yeah.
I would say that like that can sometimes encourage them with like a little bit of like prey drive because they're thinking like yeah, I got your foot, like this is cool. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing. Like if you're trying to play with her that way, then like it's like a great way to build up her drive. But if you're trying to get her to stop, I would just implement the correction and everything.
Yeah.
Just to make that like boundary clear.
Yeah.
Because as she gets bigger, it could be more of a problem, and we also don't want her doing it with strangers who might not know that she's kind of joking around.
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah. That's why we're here today. Is we want a German Shepherd that's going to be a German Shepherd.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to, if we say sick it, you know, sick 'em or whatever, you know, like protecting us from intruders, everything short of a police dog essentially is what we want. And we're ready for that commitment. We just want it to start the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Adding in that structure is going to go a long way since you have her as a puppy. And I will say for like, does she do any like barking in the home yet, or is she still a little shy with that?
Only playing with Harley.
Yeah, okay. Like Harley will bark at her, and then she'll like mimic what Harley did.
One thing I'll say like ahead of time that might be helpful with like any barking that might occur in the future, because you're wanting that little bit of like guard barking. What I would do is, because we make a distinction between like elimination and control. So elimination would be like something like pawing at the kennel. Like we don't want her doing that. So we don't necessarily say a word. We'll just like correct.
Yeah.
With something we're trying to like control a behavior. Let's say she's barking out the window. We're okay with that for a little bit. Then we'll say a warning word or like a noise where like here we might do like the shh sound and everything. You guys might have like quiet or stop or make the same noise, whatever works. You'll give that warning and then you'll follow up with whatever correction, whether that's your hand, a bonker, a prong collar, e-collar, whatever. You would give that verbal and then the correction. You wouldn't correct outright. Because if you correct without saying anything, you'll completely stop her from barking in the home. So to have that little bit of barking, but to be able to control it, you would want to have a word paired with it and then follow up with the word, follow up after the word, I should say.
Yeah.
When you're doing it though, keep in mind, and this goes for pretty much everything, I would only say the word once. So that way you have that immediate response, because the more you say it, then they're viewing it as, okay, when mom says stop 3 times, then I have to stop.
Yeah.
They're not viewing it as like...
It has less value.
Yeah. So I would just say like stop, and then let's say they bark after that, correction. And so on and so forth, just staying consistent with that is going to let her know that I can bark, but when I hear the word stop, I better stop barking. Does that make sense? But that's like more like a little bit down the line, but I know that from what you guys were saying, I figured that would be useful as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, so if whatever we go with, I guess we'd want to know what it all entails. So whether that's daycare and train or our individual sessions, you said if we did sessions, it would be, the first few would be introducing to prong, and then after that, introducing to e-collar, and that would include stuff like recall, heel, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, recall and heel are going to be like in any program no matter what, because those are the 2 like foundational commands.
Yeah.
Not only for you guys to have because you're going to be walking her and then it's important to have recall, but also because that's how we're teaching her to understand the pressure and everything.
Yeah.
Like the reason why we teach heel first is because for us, that's the easiest way of them learning the rules, basically, of handling the pressure and moving with the pressure.
Yeah.
So once they have that command down, then it's like, now it can be applied to other stuff very easily because they know what this means now.
Yeah.
It's not like so like fresh to them.
Yeah. Well, right. She's already pulling, at least for me. I've taken her and Harley on 3 walks now, and the pulling from her is insane.
Yeah.
So already like wanting to nip that in the bud right away.
One thing that you can do pretty immediately that might help a little bit is, do you guys just walk around like this flat collar here? Mm-hmm. You could try something like a slip lead or like a slip collar that like tightens if she pulls to introduce a little bit of pressure, but it's nothing like extreme or anything like that.
Only what she applies, so if she like chokes herself, then
Yeah, and then the only thing with that, I would just keep it high up on the neck as possible.
Yeah.
So that way it's not like bothering her throat.
Okay.
And then it'll also give you more control to have like that easily like directional pressure with her head and everything. I would recommend staying away from a harness for now. You can use a harness later on if you guys really want to. But right now it would only make any pulling worse. So I would just stay away from it for the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what in general the program would look like for you guys. Obviously the more in-depth details can be figured out. But for the in-person, I wouldn't go past like 6 weeks just because I don't think that those extra classes will be necessary because you guys are already familiar with like the e-collar.
I don't think we'll need them.
And then 3 weeks would be like the bare minimum because that would just be like the fastest we can introduce everything. 6 weeks would give you a little more wiggle room, and then classes on the back end to be able to go over any extra commands that you guys might want to go over or any extra like scenarios like socialization and stuff. And then daycare and train stuff would be, I would say for that, at minimum, I would say like a 10-day daycare and train, just so she has like those 2 separate 5-day intervals to do like prong and then e-collar.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would stick within that range, and like obviously this can also be figured out through email and everything.
Perfect.
Did you guys have any more questions with that or anything else in general involving Dakota?
Oh, I had a question.
Yeah.
So for to just the pulling, would you recommend the gentle leader for them?
The gentle leader can work too. Yeah, that's a good call. Do you guys know you're familiar with a gentle leader?
Does that go on their
Yeah,
nose?
on their nose. That's another way that you can start introducing pressure as well. With that, you're having better control of her head because you're basically controlling the way her muzzle goes. And then it's still like very light on her. So if she pulls, she's not like pulling with her whole body or pulling with her neck or anything. It's just right at the front of her face where we have like the most control.
Got it.
And that can also be a good way of introducing light pressure as well, because with the puppies that we have here, sometimes we'll go even gentle leader into prong, and then like if they choose to do e-collar later. So that's another good way. Gentle leader or slip lead will both work. But
All right.
that's just another option for you guys. If that's something that you're interested in, or if you're not familiar with it, that can be like something talked about as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I don't have any other questions, though. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But other than that, I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys will be okay because you already have experience with Harley and everything. And
Well, and he's had dogs his whole life.
yeah, so everything should be working out well. Also, she seems like pretty confident, which is what you want in a puppy. So that's nice to see. Just start implementing that physicality, a little bit of structure with her, and then practice the crate stuff as much as you can while you're there, so that way you don't have to worry about it when you're gone. Other than that, did you guys have anything else?
So we want to leave the house at some point. But I'm scared she's going to get her teeth caught in the fucking kennel. or something.
Yeah.
So what do you think we could do for that?
Yeah, so doing the practice when you're at home will help you kind of quell some of that worry just because you're going to just build up that repetition. Another thing you could do, which sometimes owners will do like for their adult dogs who have separation anxiety, if they're like really wanting to like be on top of it like to a T, is I would just get like a cheap like at home like camera you can point at the cage. So that way, like, maybe you do a practice run where you go outside, you get in the car, you turn the car on, do all the stuff that might be triggering for her to know that, like, mom and dad are leaving. And you see it on the camera, and then you can come back in, bring her back down, address it however you need to. But since you're starting early, you should be able to see steady progress as long as you're consistent with the physical corrections and everything. And then if you still find yourself struggling, then moving into that prong collar, e-collar will make it a lot easier, because with the e-collar, you can like stay outside and correct it from outside, so it can be even more immediate. But you should be able to make a lot of progress and even like get rid of it if you guys are consistent now. But just keep in mind that the prong collar, e-collar down the line will still be happening. So it's not something you'll have to worry about as she goes into an adult dog. But I would do what you can now, because usually once you start implementing that structure, you should see it like turn around pretty quick. Because it doesn't look like she has any like nervous issues necessarily, where some dogs have like, they just have like anxiety that they even need like medication for and everything. She seems pretty confident.
Yeah.
So I don't think you guys will have trouble with her. It's more just setting that boundary. But it is going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of practice. And as long as you guys are consistent, everything should be solid with it. But
so even at night, like the one night that he was saying that we tried to sleep in a different room than her, she was gnawing. Like we could hear her gnawing. So at that point,
one of the Ring cameras in the house to watch her.
so we did, and she was doing that. So when we're trying to set a boundary that's like, we're not going to get you if you're screaming, and she's gnawing at it, like then what, you know?
I would go and do like a firm correction, either with, you can try the bonker. So like the tier that I would go through is, you could try the bonker. If she's like, because some dogs are a little more soft with the corrections than others. If that's enough, perfect, then you know that works. If not, you can try the kennel correction, which is like a little bit more intense. And then last like step, if she really doesn't care about any of that, would be just doing like the physical hand correction, and then just seeing what level you need to do that at.
Okay.
So sometimes it's even had to be done here where like the puppy like doesn't care about anything. So then you would just do a very firm physical correction, and then they should learn that, okay, when I'm gnawing on the kennel, like mom or dad comes out and they give me a correction, but they're not letting me out of the kennel. So it's like the only option is to just chill, because like you're just going to keep getting corrected.